So for step 19, attaching the roll cage, you can see that we're going to attach the right side of the roll cage to the chassis now with a number of screws here. And then once that's on, we need to attach the front right shock tower. And you can see it's a number of screws and washers, and then there's this J1 piece that also has to go in there. And that's what this gray piece is right here, and this is that A27 shock tower piece. So there is all the hardware that we need for this step. And I'll just set this up and we'll start putting this together. And obviously we have to work on this step first because this all attaches to the other part of that roll cage piece right here. So we'll set this up and we'll put it together. Okay, so if I grab our chassis here, we're going to move a few things out of the way. You can see that this needs to sit like that, right about like that, from front to back, more or less. So you can see that it's going to need to be attached down here, and across. So I think what we'll do is let's start off with that one piece right here. So if we're going to go for the back rear here, we're going to need an MA4. The MA4 are these flathead, the longer flathead screws. So again, if we grab this, and I can show you that this front part has to fit over top of that bulkhead like that, so that this all now fits nice and smooth all the way across. So we're going to start off with this one right here, and let's make sure that fits in there. There we go. And again, once I've got this in a little ways here, that's enough. We're going to move on to this next one. So the MA4. So these are both the longer screws at the back end here. And again, I'm not going to go all the way. Now you can see that this is an MA4 once again. So we're doing the longer screws. That's going to go into this front one here. So let's put that in there. And again, I'm not doing it all the way. And let's see, that's going into that part there, across from there. Then the MA5, which is the smaller, the small one, which is actually, there's only one of them. You can see here that it's going into that front one and into that bulkhead. So you can see that it's going into this front hole right here and going straight into that bulkhead. So let's make sure that fits. Yes. Okay, now I'm going to screw this one all the way in. There we go. I'm not going to over tighten it, but it is on just like that. Excellent. So now, because we know that they're all in on this side, we can start screwing this all the way in. And again, I'm just going to go back and forth, making sure that there's no binding. Once I feel resistance, I'm going to stop. They go in a fair ways, so don't be thinking, uh-oh, like, where do I stop? And you'll feel it. Yep. So again, just a little bit of a check. Yep. 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 And we already had done the front. So very, very cool. So now that the roll cage is on, we now need to get the shock tower in place. And you'll notice there's quite a few washers. So this, you can see that it's inset there. That is going to sit over top of this, just like that. But first, we're going to need to get these washers in place. So there's going to be 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to be using these MA4 screws to hold this down, just like that. Now, because we're working on this one, I'm not going to worry about the top yet, but we are going to need to get that in place. So if we turn that over, make sure that that is sitting okay, which it will be once we get that screwed in. So I'll just grab the screwdriver here. And let's get this started a fair ways, just so that it's in enough that it's not going to have anything fall out. And then we'll put the other screw in. There we go. So I'm going back and forth, just making sure that there's nothing binding, but there'll come a point where you just know that you're in all the way. There we go. It's already starting to pull. I'm not going to over tighten because these will strip out. They're not like the tapping screws. There we go. I'm at the end. One more turn. I'm at the end. One more turn. And now that's on nice and tight. And you can see that looks pretty good. So what do we have to do now? We've got one last thing. So now we're going to grab this J1 piece, which look like that. And you can see that there are 2 washers once again that have to go on the other side of this. And the MA2 is going down into there. And the 2 washers go into place. And we've got the J1 piece. Now, it's showing you using pliers, which is fine, but I'm just going to hold it briefly for the first little bit and make sure that this is going in correctly. Now it is showing the pliers, but at the moment I can do this by hand. But I can tell it's going to get harder to do. Yeah, so I will use the pliers now. So it's just showing using the pliers on one end, grabbing it, and then continuing to screw things in. Now I want to make sure, depending on how that sits, yes. Okay, so it looks like we can just hold this like this and continue to screw this in until it's in all the way. Which it pretty much is. So there we go. So ultimately that's what that's going to look like. So it just sits there. Now it's interesting that it's a notch pattern. Again, not really sure why, but I guess we'll find out at a later date. But there we go. There is our right shock tower in place. And of course our right side of the roll cage. Very, very cool. So that means that step 19 is complete. So we're going to move on to step 20 now and start working on the left side of the roll cage.